Are you tired of hearing people complain about the world and ready to own the responsibility to make the world a better place? Hey, my name is Brent Simpson, and welcome to this episode of Creating the Future. I believe that within each of us is a yearning to make the world a better place. So let's work together and make that desire a reality. My hope is that today's conversation inspires you as you endeavor to create the future. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of Creating the Future. This is a very special episode to me today because I get to share with you an interview I did with a person that in some regards is a hero to me, a trailblazer, a pioneer, somebody who went before me back in my days of youth ministry and even now watching how he is leading and learning from him. And that is a guy by the name of Johnnie Wilson. Johnnie serves as the executive pastor at Faith Assembly in Orlando, one of the premier Assembly of God churches in the state of Florida, and is doing an outstanding job there. He is an incredible leader, and I had the opportunity to interview him in the midst of a group of churches in our area called Section 10. It's kind of the East Hillsborough County area, and for all these churches, I had the opportunity to interview Johnnie, and I had asked him if he would allow me to put it on the podcast, and he said that he would. And so I just love the fact that I get to share this with you. Now, if you're in ministry, this might pertain to you a little more than others, but I think we can all learn some valuable leadership lessons through this great conversation with Johnnie Wilson. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's podcast with Johnnie Wilson.
As we get started, let's just have some fun right off the bat. So we're going to play Would You Rather. I got 5 Would You Rather questions, technically 6 that I threw in another one. So would you rather go into the past and meet your ancestors or go into the future and meet your great-grandchildren?
I was ready to go future until you said great-grandchildren. I'm not sure.
Great-grandchildren.
Great. I'll go future, great. Yeah. See what the future's like.
What do y'all say? What would y'all do? Yeah? You got to know future people, okay. The world might not even be here at that time.
Yeah, that's the scary part. That's why.
Right. Would you rather have a rewind button or a pause button on your life?
Man, I'm going to say I'm going to go rewind. Too late for the pause. There's, I'd like to go back. I've had, just a little personal thing, but I've had 3 of my kids get married in the last 2 months or so. So definitely rewind, go back to some of those younger days for a little bit.
Heard that. Would you rather be able to talk with animals or speak in foreign languages?
I can already speak to my dog, and he understands a lot, so I'm going to go foreign languages.
Would you rather lose your vision or your hearing? That's just dire.
You can tell the positive confession people, they're like, I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to say either one of those because... Cancel. Well, man, that's a tough one, isn't it? I don't know. I'd say it's 50-50 for me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Would you rather be Batman or Superman?
Superman. He is the official best superhero. That's no debate there. All right.
All right. This is the one I threw in, maybe the most important one. There's a game tonight at 8:25. Miami Dolphins or Jacksonville Jaguars?
Who I want to win or who I think will win?
Let's go with who you think will win.
It's probably going to end in about a 6-6 tie, but the game to watch this weekend will be Monday night. But I will say I don't mind. I like the Dolphins better than I like the Jags. Yeah, I don't like the Jags very much. So let's go Dolphins. Dolphins by 10. And whoever wants to see it, if you're at this meeting, you're only going to get to see the second half because we're going along. All right, Spirit of God's going to fall, and we're going to be here a while. Everybody, get ready.
Who is your team?
The Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs, the world champions. Yeah,
But
and it's not a bandwagon
your team
thing.
Before Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, I'm talking. Trust me, you can go back on my social media. I was suffering through all of the rough years, so I've been. I grew up in Kansas City, so I come by it naturally. I've been with them for a long time.
All right, let's set the tone for this evening with this question. What is the funniest thing that you have done or seen or been around in all your years of ministry? Tell us a funny story.
Well, I mean, there would be a lot, as with all of us who have been in ministry for a minute. But so sometimes, you get in meetings and these ideas get thrown around and they sound good in a meeting room, like, oh, that'll be awesome. And then when you try to actually make it real, you're like, who was saying this would be good? Like, this is not good at all. So this is one of those instances where in a meeting, we were planning a big night. This is for student ministry, probably 10 or 12 years ago. We were going to have a big outreach service and bring in hundreds of lost kids, and we were going to, really present the gospel in a riveting way and see so many of them saved. And so how can we do that? Just talking about different creative ideas. And someone had the idea, why don't we talk about the rapture? All right, that would be good. And then why don't we let's make a rapture kind of happen. And then everybody will be like, oh my gosh, is this it? And then it's when we go, it wasn't, but were you ready? And then the altars will be flooded. So in the meeting room, this was it was a done deal. This is going to be amazing. This might get a write-up in Pentecost Evangel back when they had, write-ups and such. The night comes, I'm preaching. Here's the way it was supposed to go down. I'm preaching. I have my key phrase. The trump of God sounds. We were supposed to have a guy back there playing trumpet. The trump of God sounds. Everybody goes, oh my gosh! And then Jesus appears up in the sky of our gymnasium where we met, and he says, "Come!" And everybody freaks out, and then we give the altar. That's how it's supposed to go down. I'm preaching. I get to my little key phrase, and the trumpet doesn't sound, and so I have to circle around and stall, and then come back around to my key phrase. Still no trumpet is sounding. So now I'm preaching directly back at where the trumpet. I notice at that point, it's not the senior in high school first chair trumpet player that they were supposed to get. Apparently he couldn't be there that night. It's this little middle schooler with shaking, holding this trumpet, scared to death. And so I circle around the third time and I give my phrase. And instead of Gabriel sounding the trumpet, it was kind of more like a sick, dying animal. So the third time I go around, he's kind of So instead of this roaring trumpet, it's that and then dead silence. And I don't have really anything else to say because now I got to wait for the rapture to happen. So and then it's kind of silent. The next thing you hear is the sound of a genie lift. You guys know what the genie lift. So in the gym back then, we had a backdrop that was a curtain. Then we had some room, and then the wall would be back there. So the genie lift was supposed to go up during the trumpet blast, but there was no trumpet blast. So now all you hear from behind the curtain is So then I'm looking at all these students as they're looking puzzled, what's that sound? And so they're looking in the general direction. As they're looking in the general direction, here comes Jesus. How it's supposed to be a twinkling of an eye? This is more like the slowest blink of all time. So Jesus is coming up and he's going. So first you see his hair, then you see his eyes. And during this, I can remember talking this guy, his name was Eric, talking him into playing Jesus for that night. Dude, this is going to be awesome. And as he's coming up, I feel like he kind of gives me a little glance never again. Our relationship is over. So he's kind of coming up over the rim. And probably the worst part of it all is when you stopped hitting the button on the genie lift, he's rising and then goes like that at the top. And then he reaches out his hand, and you could just tell he didn't want to do it at all, but he reached out his hand and he goes, "Come." And then I was like, "Can you bow your heads and close your eyes?" And now I have to try to give an altar call. And to say that, I don't know that no one got saved that night. I think some people got saved. What I fear is that more people turned away from the Lord that night. I feel like there was some in the crowd that was like, if this is what it's about, I'm out. Felt like there were some Christians that were really second-guessing their faith because of our presentation that night. So that one is one of the real lowlights of my personal, we went into that with all kinds of aspirations, and it was a rough one, so.
That's awesome. Come on, that's good. All right, so some of you have been at this meeting that we do annually every year where we try to bring in somebody like this, and so you're aware of this. But from this point on, if you have a question, raise your hand or whatever. We'll run a mic to you, and you can ask a question if you would like to. I do have a list of questions, a little more serious. Let's have some fun together, but some leadership questions. And we're going to talk for the next 30 minutes and see if we can glean some wisdom from Pastor Johnnie and what he's learned over the years. So starting with that, so you've been at Faith for 24 years. That is a long time, a lot longer than a lot of other people have been in ministry, or especially in one location. In 24 years, you've seen a lot of ups and downs. You've seen a lot of growth in Faith Assembly. We built a whole new campus there. I say we as if I did it. You guys built we like the kingdom. You built a whole new campus there. You built the Gaylord Palms, Faith Assembly, over there on Curry Road, which I got to admit, the first time I heard it was called the Curry Ford Campus. Yeah. I thought for sure you guys sold the branding to some Ford dealer over there.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
I'm like, they're getting paid by some Ford dealer to call it. That's kind of sketchy, but you built the campus over there. You've seen a tremendous amount of growth. What are some of the lessons, that you've learned over the years through the growth and the change? What are some of the things that are applicable to us?
Well, so I don't know. A couple of things. There's some real champions in ministry in this room who could answer that question better than I could. So know that I approach even this moment with a really solid level of like, come on, now I shouldn't be up here talking about this, but some of the people in the room could do this so much better than me. But, from my context, I'll just throw out there kind of what has jumped out. And so when I think about over the years of serving and kind of seeing God systematically, I would say one of the things that jumps out is that in my younger years of ministry, we would often pray and believe for the moment of transformation. We were always looking and praying and fasting and begging and pleading God for the one service that was going to flip the switch, or the one event that then we're not going back. Yeah. And while I can look back and go, yeah, there were seasons and there were events that kind of changed our culture a little bit, or certainly changed a lot of people's lives because they were a part of it or whatever. When you look back over a couple of decades, you realize, no, it's just slow, incremental, or not even necessarily slow, but certainly incremental growth, incremental momentum, a little bit of momentum added, a little bit more momentum added. And so as you look back, you go, yeah, I can't even see the one moment. I can't even see the one, because there wasn't. It was get a little bit better tomorrow than we were today. And that's really what we've tried to do. And so with that, there has to be some honest conversations, and you have to constantly be re-examining what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then on a personal level, leading in one place for a long time, I have had a couple seasons where I maybe considered some other things or prayed through those moments. But the first time that probably started to happen, I started to feel like when I came there, I had vision, and I felt like God accomplished a lot of what I had dreamed up, relatively quicker than I certainly thought he was going to. Whether I even really believed he was going to or not, I had vision, but pretty, a few years in, I was seeing God do more than I ever thought I would ever see him do and use me to be a part of. So in one sense, I could let myself think we had kind of arrived, and I can remember going to my pastor going, hey, so I don't know what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling, and so we kind of talked through that. What I came to realize, because I've been through that season multiple times, is you're at a place and you play your hand and you show your cards and you do what you do, and then you have a decision to make. Do I go somewhere else, show my hand, do what I do, because I could do this again? Maybe, right? With God's help, maybe I could go do the similar thing somewhere else. And that's what a lot of people do. I think I'm always quick to say this. I don't think everyone can stay in every situation for over 2 decades. So you're never going to hear me go somewhere and go, well, why do people leave their church? Listen, we all know why. We all know why some people leave churches. All right, like I understand that. I've been blessed to be in a very, very healthy situation, which made longevity very easy. Right, I get that. But sometimes people will cut longevity short because they've shown their hand, because they've done what they do, and now I have a choice. I either go somewhere else or I reinvent myself. I learn, I go back to the drawing board, I go back to prayer, I go back and say, God, you've accomplished the vision you gave me when I came here, so I need fresh vision. God, these leaders that are sitting around, this room that I've taught for the last 5 years, they've heard all my leadership lessons, so I need some fresh I need something new to tell them. I need fresh vision to give them. And that's harder work than moving.
Yeah.
Like, I hate moving, but I'm telling you, reinventing yourself is way harder than moving. And so that's, at this point, multiple times where I've had to kind of have this metamorphosis of reinventing who I am, why I'm here, what God is calling me to do. And that's hard work. It's easy to get a little bit complacent. It's easy to get a little bit stagnant. Even spiritually, it's certainly easy to get stagnant. And when I, in my life, when I felt myself doing that, losing my spiritual edge, I would mix it up. I would do whatever I had to do to regain my spiritual edge again. And so I think, as I look back, those are a couple of things over a long period of time. I think it's been incremental. And then I think, to lead the same people for a long period of time, as many people in this room can testify, you've got to go back and get fresh leadership, fresh vision, fresh word from God.
That's so good. I think that incremental thing is so good too. Like, it was Jim Collins that talked about the flywheel principle that you guys might remember. You're always pushing, and slowly it gets a little easier over time. But most of us think there's like one thing that if we do this thing, it'll suddenly change. I don't think it ever works like that. It doesn't seem.
And the great thing about momentum is you are, at some point, you stick at the right things for long enough. At some point, you do see more results with less energy or with less, less work. Yeah. And so if you do have if you keep in the right things right and the main things, you stick at it long enough. And so I did experience that the longer we kept doing what we felt like God was calling us to do, probably the more energy giving it was versus exhausting.
Yeah, that's so good. All right, so this next question would kind of really tells off of that very well, because you've been there 24 years, which means there has to be a healthy staff culture around faith, or you wouldn't be there. And you just kind of joked about it a little bit, but what is it that makes a healthy staff culture? And what do you say to pastors or any of us in this room that are trying to create that healthy culture?
Well, I'm a big believer of just culture in general. And so I would say this about culture. Culture is set and protected by what we value, right? Yeah. So and everywhere has a culture. Like, your favorite restaurant, it's not your favorite restaurant simply because of the food, because of the culture. You're experiencing a lot when you go in there. Yes, the food's part of it, but the way the room is and the way they treat you and the way the music, like it all part of it. And so everywhere your church has a culture, you go, no, we haven't set I know, trust me, there is. And people experience your culture before you tell them what your culture is. And so it all comes from what you value. So we constantly need to ask ourselves, what do we value around here? Well, let me say it this way. Maybe not what we value, because we, as Christians, we're used to good Sunday school answers. And so if I say, what do you value? Everybody goes, prayer, Jesus, worship, healing, we got all that. Let me say it this way then. What do your actions say you value? Because now that might be a different answer, right? To what are my actions? So if we're going to talk about a healthy staff culture, our actions are going to say what we value. That's what's going to set the culture. And so I would say through the years, as far as our staff especially is concerned, prayer has been something that has been an absolute highest value, highest passion. Our senior leadership pastor, Carl Stevens, most of you in this room are well aware of his leadership and his legacy. But, we as a staff, I'm talking without fail every morning, we're praying together an hour, and it's not an option. It's not but I scheduled a breakfast meeting. You schedule a breakfast meeting, know that next day you're going to have a meeting with pastor, and he's going to be like, what was that? Oh, I had a breakfast meeting. Be like, okay, we'll make that a lunch, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at prayer. Like, it's not I'm too busy. It's not whatever. And I'm not here saying that if you don't, that your church isn't spiritual. Again, it's all context for us. It's one of the value points. And so what that has done is it's helped with the harmony in our pastoral staff, which again would be something that I would say protect and value staff relations and staff harmony. But there's something about being in that room with everybody in the morning. You're seeing everybody, you're praying together, whatever. I've heard, maybe sometimes the case might be the only time I'm with these people that I'm working with is when we're in a meeting fighting over who's going to get this building for this event or who's going to get the money for this budget for this. And if that's the only time we're spending together is when there is this potential contention going on, well, that's gonna affect culture. So even, obviously prayer is going to be beneficial on a lot of levels, but I have seen it beneficial just in our staff relationships, and then I would say trust is for our staff culture, that there has been a good level of trust, and I think that goes both ways. I think that most of the people that serve under a pastor do a lot to earn trust. I can say this, that over the last 24 years, the number of times Pastor Carl has said no to me, I could probably count on one hand. And so someone might be quick to go, oh, so you get everything you want. And no, that's not the answer. The answer is I don't ask him for things that I think he would want to say no to.
Right.
Because I'm gonna lose trust in him if I do that. I've talked to a lot of younger guys, and they'll be in situations where they're hounding their leadership for more of this and more of that, and when they won't let me do this, they won't let me do that. And usually my advice is, you know what, you need to go somewhere else, because you're making the life of your leader miserable, because he doesn't want to say no to you, but you keep putting him in this position where he has to say no. Yeah. And so I had made that decision a long time ago. I think Hebrews, I think it's maybe chapter 13 of Hebrews, where it talks about people who serve over us, and it says we're there to make their joy, or to make their job a joy, not a burden. Mm-hmm. So if I'm adding extra stress and extra, he's got to, I don't want to meet with him, he's going to ask me, no. And things that I would say this to, things that I know that my pastor would want us to do, I'd start doing them before he asked me to do them. So there was multiple times through the years where he would be like, have you ever thought about doing whatever? And I'd say, oh yeah, we have that on the calendar. We're doing that. Oh, you are? Yeah. And he'd get this look on his face like, oh wow, but I'm all that time, I'm depositing trust. And with that, it made for an environment where I loved being there, because that trust was now coming back, because he knew. Well, I'm talking about me, but it's really our staff wide. But there's not really a doubt of loyalty, and because again, that's one of those things that's valued around here. And so it takes some of us kind of maybe modeling that, but besides him. But I'll just throw this out there. But my pastor's been one of the most just compassionate people that I've ever met before, and so he cares. There's been different seasons all through those years where I walked away from meetings going, man, this dude really cares more about who I am than what I do. Yeah. And that he's not perfect. None of us are, but that spoke to me a lot in those moments when I go, wow, this guy cares about who I am. So that's a lot, but
yeah, we talk about what do we value, and so often what you value is determined by what you'll fight for. And so it's funny, you're talking about prayer, and if you miss prayer that morning, you got a meeting with pastor the next day, right? Because he's going to fight for it. Yeah. And values are really determined what you fight for. So you can say, this is my value or that, because it's on paper, and because we have 16 fundamental truths, Super Terry, that we say we value. But what are we really fighting over? That's what we value. And in your culture, part of that is the prayer. So I'm just curious with prayer, what does that practically look like? Like, what time is it to when? Are you guys all meeting in one room? Do you hold hands? Do you, you know what I mean? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, it's funny. We just made some adjustments to it, because for years and years, it was kind of like the senior pastoral staff would be in a room, and then like our some of our other departments or staff would kind of be in a different room, youth staff and our leadership college kids. And so that's the way it's been for a long time. And really over the last couple of weeks, it was like, hey, why don't we just have everybody all together? So we've started doing that. So it's a bigger group now. But in that, Pastor was very adamant as to what it looked like. And so we sent out like 3 or 4 different emails to everybody who was this new system that they were all coming to. And he kept saying, we read the word for 30 minutes and we pray for 30 minutes. And he just kept saying that over and over again, which again, back to setting culture, you're going to set culture by valuing it and over communicating it. And so it was, for some of us, it was a little bit like, I know, we get it, but that's the way it's going to be, and so he kept saying, read the Bible. And so we don't do other than we read the Bible for 30, we pray for 30. About 2 days in, he's like, oh, come tomorrow, I'm going to share a little bit at the start. Gets up, share. Guess what he shares on? We read the Bible for 30 minutes, we pray for 30 minutes. And he was like, and when we read the Bible, we're not reading self-help books, we're not listening to other sermons, we're in the Word. When we praise, he started challenging everybody in the room. You know what? The biblical form of prayer is to pray out loud. So pray out loud and whatever. And again, setting just a very specific culture of what this time is going to look like. And you could go, let everybody do what they want. But to be honest, some of the people in that room need that guidance and need that accountability and need that structure. And so, yeah, it's been huge for me. So most of us just read the Bible through when we're doing that. And I can safely say I've read the Bible way more times through than I would have if I had not been an employee at Faith Assembly. And I love Jesus and I love the Word and I would have read it, but not as much or as systematically as I have been. And so we meet at 8:25 right now and go till 9:30. So I guess you get that first 5 minutes to kind of get set, and then usually reading from about 8:30 to 9, and then praying from about 9 to 9:30. And we don't really ever, there'll be times when somebody will go, hey guys, I feel like we should pray for this, or God kind of gave me a word. That kind of stuff happens, but there's not a regular daily or weekly gather up at the end or anything like that.
Okay. What about, so in a similar vein, we talked about staff culture, but what about church culture? What makes a great church culture, which you guys obviously have, because healthy things grow, and so if it's a healthy culture, it's going to eventually grow in different ways. So you have a great church culture. What makes it great, and how do you help it to be great?
Yeah, as I said, people know your culture when they walk in, so we could have something on the wall, but that's not necessarily going to make our culture. One of the things that I do from time to time, and I would recommend, is if someone new does come through, or even if they're not new, maybe they're just not as churchy, or they'll at least somebody who will tell you the truth. But you could say, hey, what do you think we value around here? And they're going to give you answers that you don't expect. And so we may think we're a friendly church, but that may be 27th on somebody's list of what we value is friendliness. Well, if that's the case, now I know, okay, I want that to be part of our culture, but it's not. And here's the thing about the culture. Peter Drucker is a management expert, and he's got a quote that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So what happens is we go to conferences and they go, here's how to win the loss. And we come back and go, I'll implement that strategy of how to win the loss. But if evangelism is not one of my core values, by what our actions are, then that strategy is not going to work. And so we really have to get in the core of leadership, and that's not just probably senior pastor leadership, but certainly staff leadership, volunteer leadership. And so I would say we've worked hard to kind of protect that, and that means having a lot of conversations with a lot of people who are in leadership. They're the ones that are really going to set the culture, and that means having sometimes difficult conversations, sometimes teaching conversations. So I'm not one who would say, yeah, only one person should be up there leading, because then you're sure that person can set. No, we like to get as many people involved as we can, but in that, sometimes somebody's going to be off track a little bit on something, one of our values, and that's fine. We're gonna talk to them afterwards and say, hey, when we talk about this is really what we want to communicate. And so we've had a lot of those conversations through the years, and that's all done to protect culture. And so I think it's a matter of deciding what it is you want to value, and then being honest about, are we valuing those things? And so, if passion's it, then do we look passionate? Like, are we communicating that? Because everything communicates. If it's excellence, that's part of our culture. But if I got, stuff stacked up in the side of the auditorium, and if my bathrooms are dirty and whatever, then excellence isn't. And maybe that's fine, but just because excellence on a wall doesn't mean that's one of our values. So we've got to be honest with ourselves and go, if I want that to be my culture, I have to value that, I have to protect that, and I have to hold people accountable to it.
Yeah, that's so good. I've heard it said this way, that culture is defined by what you tolerate and what you create. So to me, I've always had the image of, you're right there by Disney. And so you get these Disney hedges that are Mickey Mouse or whatever, they're animals. Somebody's in there clipping all those. Because left to itself, it's going to branch out, it's going to do its own thing. Church culture is like that. Left to itself, it's going to run itself. Our job as leaders is to cultivate that and cut it at times, trim it, but also allow it to grow. So it's what you tolerate and what you create. Anybody have any questions before we switch gears slightly to the next question?
Yeah, Kyle?
You guys, I was a youth pastor for years and saw you guys from a distance, and obviously known for your creativity a lot. And just kind of talk in a short version, if you can, what's that process look like from creating a sermon series to whatever, stage design, or however you guys are doing that?
Yeah.
Or having a rapture happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm a super creative person or not. Maybe I'm okay. But I, somewhere along the line, really, really, really started to love and value team ministry. And when I started, that did not come natural to me. So some people are just natural, like, oh, honey, booger, sugar, that Jeannie Mayo type of person. I am not that. When I started ministry, I was more like, I'll be in my office and I'll do my thing and y'all do your thing. And if I see you on the way out, I might nod. If not, maybe tomorrow. That was, it's just kind of how I don't know. It was just, and I had team people work with me that it really wounded them a little bit, or certainly they didn't feel a part of the team like they should have. And somewhere along the line, I started to really work on getting better at that. And I'm to the point now where, man, I hardly will make a decision or certainly plan anything like that without getting some people in the room and saying, okay, what do you think about this? Or what do we need to, as a practical answer, we do kind of at least quarterly, most of our different departments do this. I do this now on a church level. We just make sure we get the right people in the room, 8 or 10 people that have some creativity. We've, through the years, used a lot of people that don't work at the church for that. People that are kind of, sometimes not even really the most saved people, but yet they're the ones that have kind of seen a lot of stuff and maybe can throw out some ideas. We believe that the message is sacred, but the method isn't. And so I don't think you'd be hard-pressed. We've had a couple moments where we failed, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a time in which our creativity overwhelmed the message or the truth. We don't really play that. We don't put in creativity just for the sake of, we got to always show a, video clip, or we always got to have a secular song play. Like, no, that's not, if it's not going to help communicate the gospel, we're not going to mess with it. But we'll get a team of people together in a room, and we'll start to go, hey, this is what we feel like God wants to say. God, we just feel like we need to talk about prayer. Now, what can we do to really drive this home? What can we do to decorate this? Well, we could talk about this. Oh, I heard one church did this, or man, I saw this one, video the other day, and somebody pulled it up. And so it's really about getting those voices and listening to them. And I have found that when you get those people in the room and they start throwing out ideas, they'll be the ones that will, work the hardest to accomplish it because they're a part of creating it. And I know that sometimes it's easier. I've heard people say, yeah, well, I just don't have creative people, in my church. And I would probably say, yeah, you probably do have them. It's just a matter of finding them and then getting them in the room. And so at this point, like on a practical level, again, just talking about our context, not right or wrong, my pastor is not really a part of those meetings. I kind of direct those, and I go to pastor and I say, hey, here's what we're Here's what we feel like God's maybe telling us, and he has the chance to go, I don't want to mess with it. Okay, that's fine. And then some of them he'll be like, oh, I like that a lot, and he'll really gravitate to those. But we're just helping kind of the overall creative expression of what we do. I think variety sometimes can come across as creativity. So I think if we do the same exact thing all the time, it'll, even if it is creative, it'll seem not, because it's the same thing we did last week and the same thing we did last year. And so there's a book called Made to Stick that talks about breaking people's guessing machines. So when somebody comes to your service, they're expecting what's going to come next. Right. They're going to go, oh yeah, well now, and then now we sing one more song. Okay, now the announcements, and then now this, and now he's going to tell a funny story, and then he's going to redivert. Like, the more we can do where people go, hold up, what now? Like, break their guessing machine. It doesn't have to be the most inventive, creative, no one's ever done this before. It just has to be different. And guess what? When they experience something different, they go, oh, that was creative. And you're like, well, no, it wasn't. We just moved this song to here, and we moved the offering to here. But sometimes that can come across as creativity just because it's different and a little bit of variety. Amen. Yeah.
That's good. All right, so we have 5 minutes left, and I want to get to the last question here in a second. But before we get to that one, I'm going to mix two of them together. You can answer it whichever way or however you would like to. So obviously, we're all walking through COVID right now. It's been a unique season. What have you learned through COVID, mixed with, I think there's a lot of trepidation about the future, not of the church capital C, but the church lowercase c, with America and the direction it's going right now and such. So what do you see happening in the future? What trends, what do you see happening in the future, and what have you learned through the COVID pandemic? Yeah,
let me start with this second and maybe try to work my way back to COVID. We don't get to talk about COVID enough. So, just kidding. Here's where I feel like a little bit of discomfort with the direction that I see the church going, and it may bear witness with somebody here, it may not, but I've been in it long enough, but I'm not, I haven't been in it as long as some, but I feel like we're moving a little bit away from experiential moments with God in the church. And that probably concerns me a little bit. I definitely started seeing that across student ministries over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, and I have traveled quite a bit, speaking a lot to students in a lot of different settings across the country. And I just started finding that students were more and more unfamiliar with experiencing the power of God and experiencing the presence of God in a way that really affects them. Really, even I'm finding fewer and fewer people ever even know how to even really get a hold of God. And I know that we could go, I know that we could think that some of those things are cultural, in that, oh, you just think that that's the only way to be a Christian is to be snotting at the altar and rolling around. And it's not that. That's not what I'm talking about. But I am afraid for a generation of students, I guess because I've talked to so many students who are even adults now or whatever, who can go back and go, I don't know everything. And I even had that college professor try to talk me out of my faith, but I can't answer all the questions, but I know that God's real. Because I remember that night that God I have that in my life where I'm just like, I'm sorry, God's real. Like, yeah, you may have some debates for me, but I don't know what to tell you. God's real. Like, I know he's real in my life. I'm worried about a generation that has never had that moment. Right? And so they've sat in their little cute small group and they've told their stories and they prayed on the way out and got an Oreo cookie. And again, like, I'm not against small groups, right? I hope you hear my heart. I'm just like, yes, do all of that, but also have some moments of spiritual revelation and fight for a move of God. And so I think I'm afraid that the church is maybe moving to a place of being a little bit too cute and has moved away from experiencing really truly who God is. As far as COVID goes, I think the thing we've learned is that the church is gonna do fine no matter what happens, and we've certainly seen that. We saw ministry opportunities just drop on our lap, things that we weren't doing before that we started doing, and God really blessed it. We were a very, very busy church. Through the years have pushed 9 events at the same time and can't figure out why nobody understands what's going on. I'm like, well, because they're getting all of our 9 events confused that we're trying to promote at this same moment. So we've been a very event-driven, very, very busy church, and COVID forced us to go, what's important, And now we're just adding these small pieces back, and we're all looking around going, wait, like the church is still going, man. We're still reaching people, and lives are still being changed without this hectic, of all of this stuff. And I'm not saying that any of it was bad. I'm not saying we won't eventually go back to a lot of it, but it's certainly shown us that it's the real basics of ministry is what really counts, and the church is going to be fine no matter what, no matter what kind of virus comes, and no matter who gets elected and whatever. The Church of Jesus Christ is going to make it, and we're going to be a part of it. Amen.
Amen. That's good. That's so good. Sure.
Do you feel that talking about politics before the message of God comes forth, that it would turn people off from?
I think it can be done in a way that from a biblical standpoint. Not to say that won't turn people off, right? But I would say at our place, again, one of the things you can go back about 4 years and a couple weeks, all right? And look at there would have been a weekend where our pastor addressed some of those things very, very, very clearly, and yes, it turned some people off, but we've always felt a real responsibility to at least present help people vote from a biblical standpoint. But it's tough. And this year this election season, it will be tougher than it's ever been. Yeah, people are ready to, really get angry over it. So yeah.
All right, so last question for the ordination class primarily that's in here tonight. So you are looked up to by young ministers across the district. You're the godfather of youth ministry, even though you're not in youth ministry anymore. But in our district, at least, you're looked up to that way, and especially just young ministers in general. Not that older ministers probably look up to you too, but what would you say to the ordination class tonight if you just had like a quick one-on-one with them? Like, what advice would you give them on this kind of special occasion?
I'm only the godfather of youth ministry, if I am that around here, because I just stayed at a place a long time. So I just got complacent and I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything with my life, and so there I am. All right. Here's what I would say, though, in all seriousness. Anybody, and we have young people coming through all the time, and I think my message ends up being this a lot to them, and it would be this: really guard against ministry with any kind of contamination in your heart. And it can happen so easily that we can get good at the skill set of ministry and lose out on a relationship with God. As a matter of fact, when I started in ministry, I didn't have a skill set. So all I had was dependence on God. And then as I got better at ministry, as my competence increased, my dependence on God could decrease. And that's the dangerous place. And if my dependence on God decreases, now I can get up and fake it till I make it. And I can get up and I can have some unresolved sin in my life, but I just got to do what I got to do. And I have been, again, I'm not perfect at all, but one of the things I've always guarded is I am going to protect the sacredness of the calling to preach the gospel. And I'm not going to get up and do that with impure motives or an impure heart. Again, not perfect, but I tell you what, I'm going to get right before I stand on the assignment God's given me in any moment at all. And so guard against thinking that I can answer this call with a contamination in my heart. That's a dangerous place to live.
That's so good. So good. Come on, y'all.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation today, and I especially hope it added value to you. If you enjoyed it, would you do me a favor and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider? It really helps to get the word out. And of course, if you share this content with your friends, that would be great too. And until next time, I hope you continue creating a better future. I look forward to being with you again soon.